And I think they're in society, we have this black or white. It's either, like you have the ones that are like, everybody gets a trophy, which not a super fan of. But then over here, it's like, well, it's either winners or losers. It's like, well, actually, I'm in agreement with the fact that if you didn't win, then fine. Like, you don't get the trophy. I'm all about the win. The best is the best, and then they should get the accolade for that. There's something about greatness that we need to appreciate. But the second and the third and the fourth, let's remove everything else. What's their individual journey or story? And that could have been a winning season for them, and therefore, great job. And then maybe next year the target is to actually get the trophy or whatever their purpose is. Maybe the trophy's never been the purpose for them. I don't know. I can't define that for them. I can only define it for me.
My friend, your role as a father is critical. You are so important. I do not think that you hear that enough, that you matter. The fact that you put your feet on the ground today, got up, and you are out working to love and serve all that has been placed in your care. Like, thank you. And that you are needed. And from this podcast, I know that is going to reinforce that truth. Incredible conversation with my new friend, Chaz Wolfe. And 3 things that stuck out to me is 1, this concept that you are responsible for the next 100 years, like you are as a man. Number 2 is, how do you step into your God-given power, authority, and responsibility? And number 3, truly remarkable to hear Chaz share his story of meeting his dad for the first time at 24 years old. Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes Podcast, where I interview incredible fathers gaining wisdom from their stories for you and I to grow in our craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 12 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 21st year of marriage. So yeah, my friend, I'm in the thick of it, and I am working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, steward, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend Chaz Wolfe. Incredible dude. Father to 4, husband for 17 years, leader of men, business leader, and working daily, just like you and I, to love and serve the world. Enjoy meeting my friend Chaz. All right, Chaz, welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes. Sorry, I'm a little late. I'm a little, groggy in the voice. I went inside just now. It's 8 a.m. to warm up my coffee to get ready for our fatherhood conversation. All the kids just left for school, so it took me about 5 minutes to shut off all the lights in the house, as they
every single
whirlwinded out. Basically, every light. Like, I'm like, what were you even doing in this room? Why did this light need to be on?
Yeah.
But Hawaii has the most expensive electrical, and I just feel like my kids are getting a kickback of some sort from Hawaii Electric. They gotta be. Chaz, here's my first question to you. How old do you find yourself today?
That is such a unique way to ask that. I love that question. Well, I'm 37 years old. I don't know if in my mind, if I'm 37, there's some days where I feel much more mature than 37. Much more
other
serious,
days? Yeah. Okay.
And then there's other times where I'm like, wasn't I just in my 20s just a little bit ago? So I guess I'm 37. I don't know.
You feel 37?
Yeah. I feel
your
great,
body
man.
feels good.
Yeah, other than the fact that I played competitive basketball when I was growing up, and I think if I stepped on a basketball court right now, I'd be sore for weeks.
Yeah.
But no, dude, I elk hunt. I'm bigger than I've ever been.
Nice.
I eat healthier than I ever have. 37 is good to me.
Good. Love it. Yeah, I raced. So my daughter, she's 16, track athlete. She went to the Nike Invitational and the Junior Olympics this summer. Like, she's a sprinter. And so I went and, went to the field the other day with her, and I raced her because she was meeting with one of her coaches, and I raced her and I put it all out on the line. Dude, 2 weeks ago, I'm 41. My leg is so jacked. It's so jacked. So I feel 41 today.
Did you win? Did you even come close?
I actually won, but I put the heart out there, bro. I was like, because she's not much of a hugger. So the bet was if I win, I get 3 30-second hugs, like whenever you know what I mean? So it's like, there was a lot on the line for me to win.
Yeah, man. It's a father's heart, right?
There you go. So, the way that you answered the 37 question, how old you are.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to a couple questions, but something stuck out to me in reading, the pre-fill out form, and you talked about wisdom.
Yeah.
And at 37 and I'm 41, and it's like, sometimes I feel like, man, I'm not that far ahead of my kids, or even, I've been on this planet for 40 years. That's not much.
Right.
Wisdom seemed to be an important word, idea, concept, belief for you. It's different, so tell me, what does wisdom mean to you?
Yeah. Wisdom, I think, is applied knowledge. And I think that you can read something, you can hear something on a podcast, but to know that it's truth and then to act on it, I think, is wisdom. And I think wisdom, the ultimate source of truth and wisdom, for me, comes from the Lord. But I think that He grants us the ability to have wisdom. And when I think of my life, I mean, single mom family, raised up, I didn't have not a lot of circumstances where, privilege existed necessarily. And so it's not like I had this awesome education and these extra things, given to me by a dad or something like that I was just like super ready to go. But I felt like the Lord gave discernment to me as maybe a little bit of a talent. And so from an early age, I could look at a situation, look at the knowledge that I had, or actively pursue new knowledge to be able to make and discern a decision so that I could then act. Like immediately right when you said that, I thought of, one of the first judgments that King Solomon made. And it's the women, they both had the baby. The one baby passes in the night, and they come and they're fighting over the one. And he doesn't just sit and think. He takes immediate action. He takes the information that he has, and then he takes action.
Yeah.
And unto letting the situation kind of unfold itself. But he created a circumstance based on his knowledge, based on discernment to if I pin these two against each other, this is likely to be the outcome. And out of that came, oh my gosh, he's so wise. And so it's like knowing your circumstances, knowing how to be decisive, but I guess there's discernment in that, unto taking action. I think that if you have no action, I don't know if there's any wisdom actually.
Yeah. So 2 thoughts come to mind as you share that. One is, and you answer in whatever, any order you want. Are men taking action today? So as a father, let's just pick a father in his home. Is he taking action today? And then also, do you think Solomon probably made 1,000 decisions that led him to be that wise, and were half of them dog crap? So you kind of get where I'm going, but what do you think of those 2 questions?
For sure. I think that discernment is a muscle that can be grown for sure. Anything that I've ever done, the first time probably wasn't that successful. Whether that was, shooting my first, free throw, which I used to absolutely suck and I got made fun of. And so I then practiced a ton and then became the best free throw shooter on the team. But I think that's how discernment works. You're going to try it a couple of times and you're going to go, ooh, I made the wrong decision, Are men taking action, making decisions, taking action? I would say at large, I want to believe in men that they are.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that there's probably a larger percentage of men that aren't. That's really alarming. But for the ones that are, I mean, they're listening to your show. So
for sure,
they're taking action. They're seeking knowledge. They're wanting to take action. And really, I would just say because for the folks that aren't taking any action, they're not even listening. So for the ones that are, the only thing that I could encourage them to do is to shorten the gap to implementation, right? So when you listen to Ned or whoever he has on the show, you learn something or you hear something and you're like, oh, that was wisdom. That was truth. That was, And then if you don't do anything, you missed it, And so that gap from hearing something and learning and going, oh, I should do that, to actually doing it, if you shorten that gap, that to me, I think works the muscle of discernment, which then obviously leads to wisdom.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. The lack of content, there's no lack of content out there, right? And we could just be absorbing this all the time, but are we doing anything with it? I'm reminded, and maybe I should challenge myself with this, it's 2025 is coming up. So you start thinking about what's next year. Yeah. And like on one hand, I pride myself, like I probably read, I don't know, 50 books this year, Audible, whatever. Yeah. Sure. But a couple years ago, one of my friends, he's like, for one whole year, he didn't read one any kind of book. He just read the Bible. That was it. Right. Yeah. And it's like, okay, if I crush 50 books, how much did I apply that, unless I say I read one 5 times or something? Sure. So something to consider. There's a word you said, and I promise I'm going to get back to just some easy questions in a minute. There's a word you said that, funny enough, my middle child has thrown at me this past week as a trigger word for her, because, old dad here is kind of intentional about his kids wanting to, make the most of their life. Yeah. So you said successful. So you said the first time you did something, you weren't successful. Sure. And so it reminded me, we're driving and my daughter's like, you care about us being successful, right? Because I don't let them do what every other parent apparently lets their kids do. Sure. Yeah. So in what's success mean to you? Like, if you're going to define success as a man of faith, who also is in business and marriage and kids, what's success? What does that mean? Yeah. We've defined that, Gathering the Kings is our community, and we've defined success as winning in all areas. We call it the exceptional life. But winning in all areas for us is business and finance, marriage and family, health, faith, lifestyle. Lifestyle specifically are the things that bring us joy. You living in Hawaii know about that. You've chosen joy. Some days, yeah. Some days, yeah. And so that doesn't answer your question. That's how I've defined it. But what does that look like? Winning. A lot of people immediately think, well, I got to be perfect. And it's like, well, no, actually, winning doesn't equal perfection. In that sentence that I used the word successful, I said I wasn't successful yet, or I wasn't successful on the first time. And but that doesn't mean that I wasn't winning in that moment, because to me, the first time I did it, maybe it wasn't as good as I needed it to be in order for it to be the top level, the angle that I was looking for, or the perfect shot, whatever I was working on. And so that first attempt, that 22nd attempt or 347th attempt is all the process of getting there. That's the winning. It's the practice. So the winning is getting up to bat or getting up to the free throw line, essentially. Yeah, and it's going. Well, first off, identifying where am I now, where do I want to go, and then taking action towards where do I want to go. If I've defined winning as, or a success as winning in all those areas, okay, great. So business and finance, how do I define winning today? Is it making more money? Well, it could be, but maybe it's encouraging one of my leaders to grow in a specific way. Or it could be reaching out to one of my clients and XYZ. Like I get to define what winning is today. Same thing with my marriage and my family. It maybe the things that your middle was talking about are the things that how you're helping her win. And she's seeing it now as like, something that she doesn't get access to, or something that she doesn't get to partake in. But you see that as like a guardrail to her making better decisions. And so that you're building the blocks of her learning how to win, Yeah. And I think with my kids, there's areas that I feel like as my responsibility. Okay. So I need to teach them faith. I need to teach them finance. And then health and fitness would be like areas. But when I use the word successful, I'm finding that there's these, let's say there's the kingdom of God, there's the kingdom of the world. The kingdom of the world defines success. It's in our face all the time of what success looks like. So I think I'm having to go, hang on a second. When we talk about it in our house, it's different than what you see on whatever you're seeing. Right. And I think there's been a shift for me in like the metrics I look at the past year is looking at Galatians, where it talks about the fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah.
So like, am I looking at from last year to now, did my love, joy, peace, kindness, self-control, did these things change? Yeah. So I'm starting to talk with my kids about, hang on, let's redefine success as a family. And I love the idea of winning. Winning doesn't always mean you got the trophy, but you got up to bat and you've made a conscious decision of where you're going.
Yeah. I think the winning to me, I love everything you just said. So I want the listener just to, I'm not going to take it away. I'm going to strengthen what Ned just said. What winning represents is the desire to first start the competition or whatever it is that we were doing. Right. I'm not going to do something if I don't have a chance to win. Right. Why participate if it's a zero game? Right. If I have no chance at winning, why am I participating? Right. Well, until what? What's the purpose of this? And so I'm just really intentional, like you are, purpose driven. And so winning kind of gets a bad rap because, like you said, winning in most people's minds equals the trophy. And it's like, okay, maybe the trophy is the target, but winning in the process of this sport or this business or this podcast, what does winning look like? It might look like a conversation that leads to inspiration to something else. It might be your daughter playing basketball and they don't win the championship game and so they don't get the trophy, but winning looked like it was a winning season last year. They had a losing season and they were making progress on the fundamentals. And I think they're in society, they're especially just, we have this black or white. It's either, like you have the ones that are like, everybody gets a trophy, which not a super fan of, but then over here, it's like, well, it's either winners or losers. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, actually, I'm in agreement with the fact that if you didn't win, then fine. Like you don't get the trophy. I'm all about the win. The best is the best. And then they should get the accolade for that. There's something about greatness that we need to appreciate. But the second and the third and the fourth, let's remove everything else. What's their individual journey or story? Right. And that could have been a winning season for them. And therefore, great job. And then maybe next year the target is to actually get the trophy or whatever their purpose is. Maybe the trophy's never been the purpose for them. I don't know. I can't define that for them. I can only define it for me,
Yeah, and it's the growth, right? So you want to see, and really, I mean, you're talking about students or youth sports. Youth sports should be focused on character growth.
Yeah.
And that means you got to learn how to lose. That means you don't get the trophy every time.
For sure.
Okay, we'll come back to some of this, but let's get to know you a little bit more. How many years you've been married?
Been married almost 17. Together with my wife for 20. Yeah.
Okay, that's what's up. Incredible. How many kiddos do you guys have?
We have 4. My daughters are 11, 8, and 2, and my son is 5.
Love it, dude. Killer. Yeah. Okay, and then where do you guys do life?
We live in Kansas City, and we do life wherever life takes us. Obviously, with our community, that we do events all over the place. We do a family mastermind trip in the summers, and so we've been to Cancun, we've been to Bermuda, we're going to Punta Cana next summer. We've been to some other cool places, but that's where the kids have been able to go with us for those specific trips, and all the other kids get to come, and it's an incredible opportunity for them to build relationships with other entrepreneur kids and do the thing that we do on a regular basis, but they get to do their own kid version of it. So.
That's awesome. And then maybe tap into that for a minute. What is it that you do for a living to provide value in the world and feed the family?
Yeah, good question. I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I've got multiple businesses. I had a portfolio of edible arrangements franchises. I'm down to 1 of those. I had 7 at one point. Got a construction company, got an equipment rental company. We have a portfolio of real estate, and then Gathering the Kings, the community I was just referencing. We've been building that for a little over 3 years.
Nice.
And we've got, entrepreneurs, that are down to earth, family oriented, growth minded from all across the country. We meet regularly and help each other win in all areas. That's kind of how it rolls.
Beautiful. Where can people learn more about that?
Yeah, gatheringthekings.com. It's all right there. Our family mastermind that I was just mentioning is in the summers, and that there's a page for that as well.
Cool. In your opinion, what's the role of the father?
Oh, yeah. The role of the father is to cast vision and to pull out the gifts, the talents, and to nurture those unto the vision of that child. And so I think it's such a unique opportunity, particularly for me to be able to describe this, because I didn't have it. No one's been able to give it to me. And so I had to get it directly from the Lord, which he's so kind in doing for those that, have a little different story than maybe how he intended it. And so for my children, though, I get to dialogue with him about who he created them to be, what their DNA, not the actual chromosomes, but
totally
what he's infused them with. Because I'm paying attention to those things. I know their personalities. I know their little quirks. I know what they're good at. I know what their challenges are. And just like I would raise up, a leader in my own companies, I'm raising them up. I'm building them as individuals unto this purpose that God has for them, which I don't have the full version or vision yet, but I get to cast a vision for our family, and I get to cast a vision for them individually for who God says that they are, and equip them for all the things that are going to come along the trail, the good, the bad, the ugly.
So I love the statement, right? To cast vision and then to pull out their God-given purpose. I don't want people to pass by. I mean, this in a sense is your opportunity God-given for you, regardless of the stuff you do with business or with, gathering the kings, etc.
Right.
Is every single man in his home has the purpose of casting vision and pulling out these characteristics, these qualities, these truths about these gifts. How do you cast vision to your family? And let me start with this. How do you go to God and go, hey, yo, it's me, Chaz. What's up? Start me from there.
Yeah.
And then how do you communicate that to your family?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of different elements to the inquiring of the Lord. I think one element is, the big ask. And I think the big ask is deposited, maybe not in full. I don't have 100% of that download, but I got a good idea of what it is that our family. Now I don't have the nitty gritty for specifically my grandchild that doesn't even exist yet,
right?
But I got a pretty good idea of me plus 2-3 generations. And that just was me over the years inquiring of the Lord specifically for that, and some of that comes along as far as an answer, in a quiet time and me taking notes and just reflecting. Some of that's actually in the nitty gritty of what I've been building. And you look back and you're like, oh, that's why I was going through that. I learned that skill because I can now see how that's going to be used over here. It's like the puzzles coming together, right? So I think that's one element is the whole vision for me, for them, for my family, the whole thing. Then the other piece is, interceding, if you will, for them individually. And that's just, bro, my 2-year-old has changed in the last 2 weeks,
Yeah.
My 11-year-old is becoming a young adult. She's sharp. The nitty gritty that I can pull out of her in 2 more years is going to be just so much different at 13. And so I'm still going to on-go with the whole vision for our family. That's not like a done deal, but I think for the most part, all right, we're heading west.
Yeah.
Got it. We're heading west. And then the nitty gritty for myself, for my wife, for my kiddos is just the daily interaction with the Lord. Sometimes that's actual through prayer, like me sitting in a quiet place and inquiring. And then I just have this relationship with the Lord because I'm a doer, because I'm an action taker, because I'm doing something with my hands or with my feet, even if I'm sitting here at the desk. And that's how he works. That's how he's talking to me directly. He's talking to me through persistence and through things that have come and been what others might consider trials. And it's like, oh no, this is an opportunity to go, all right, Lord, just like David, should I attack him? Would you give him to me? Let me inquire of the Lord. Bring the ephod, That's what I mean. Just the daily interaction.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful, important, and every man has that opportunity. I think sometimes this idea of purpose can it was a roadblock for me for a long time, right? It's like I'm standing on my front porch looking out. This is what got me into all this anyway. So I'm standing on the front porch looking out going, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. Right? Missing that I needed to turn around and look inside my house and go, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's the same for every dude on the block, right? Like every dude on the block has the opportunity to, the responsibility to be a king in that house, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yes.
God, and I think simply, guys, if you're like, I don't know what to do, think about the values, the morals, the reality that family matters. Can you look into a house in 4 generations and that still be true because of how you showed up? Like, that is your purpose. If God gives you something else, cool, go for it. But if you're unsure, run with that.
For sure.
So with that in mind, Chaz, what would you define, right? Because kingship is obviously important to you. You've unpacked it. You've wrestled with it.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a king specifically in your home? And how is that any different from being a father? I mean, these are just kind of like terms, but what are your thoughts?
I love the distinction. I was going to answer in a specific way until you said, butted up against, fatherhood. And I think a king is meant to rule well. Not all of them have, right?
Yeah, there you go.
A king is given power and authority, and I think there's only one place that power and authority comes from. It can be taken. But I think that when we are given the responsibility or authority and power, the crown is placed on your head. The weight of the crown is placed on the one who carries the responsibility, who holds the authority and the power. And unfortunately, over the course of history, not a lot of kings have done that well. And so what does that look like to be a king inside the house? That looks like to rule or to govern well. And I think that there can be order and structure, and there can also be free-flowing moments. It doesn't have to be militaristic, but it maybe it's not all the time. Anglos. But when I think of a good ruler or a good leader or a good governor, he's taken into account all the elements of the thing that he's ruling over. And so, what are the elements of the house? Well, we have the physical elements. We have human bodies. I have my wife and my children, and their human bodies. I have a physical home, like a structure. We have our emotional connections. We have our spiritual connections, our spiritual relationships with the Lord, and we can go down the list, right? But what is the inventory of the kingdom? And for me to be a good governor of those things, I need to know what those things are, and I need to pay attention to those things. I need to have intention towards taking care of those things. And I think that's how a good governor or a good ruler, a good king does it well. Now, fatherhood, I especially butted up against those two things. I think of a big heart. Like I didn't know my dad growing up. We maybe can get into the story later, but I met him when I was 24. He didn't even know I existed. I thought somebody else was my dad. And so in the process of meeting him and getting to know him, I'm sitting in my little prayer space, and there was this moment where, I've met him and he's done some incredible things for me. And I'm like, why? Like, Lord, what? There's so many single mom kids like me who grew up like this that, make the phone call and go, I don't have anything to do with you. Click. And my story was a little different. He accepted the phone call. He accepted responsibility. He had no idea. And then we started living life together and getting to know each other, specifically as men first, but then as father and son. And I'm just sitting before the Lord going like, I don't get it. Why such an elaborate story? I'm not worth that, And he's like, oh no. Then it was like, insert the 90s Bible guy shaking you going, Jesus loves you. It's like, no, man, he really, really, really does. And I'm going to give you an example, because 9 months after meeting my dad, he took me on an elk hunt. And typically we've gone many years since then, and typically we just DIY and we go on our own. But this particular trip, I had not hunted elk before, and so he hired a guide. It cost him thousands and thousands of dollars, more money that had been spent on me, by anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, my mom taking care of things growing up, but outside of that,
of course.
And so I find all this out later. We go on this trip, I find it out later, and I ask him, I'm 25 at the time. like, hey, so first off, thank you. But why did you do that? And he like shrugged his shoulders and was like, you're my son. Why? Like confused by my question.
I think the question didn't even make sense.
Didn't even make sense. And in that moment, backtracking to when I was, talking with the Lord, like that's what it was. He was like, oh, why wouldn't I? You're my son. That to me is the Father, right? The Father is the one that steps down off the throne, gets down on the knee, looks my 2-year-old in her eyes and says, hey, it's okay. We're going to be all right today. Somewhere in the middle or me gauging the two of these things, I think is what it looks like for us to do this thing well. I've got to rule well, but I've also got to be tender and have a father's heart.
Yeah, man. So much comes to mind. I think of the movies, where like the general or the captain is like first on the battlefield, first one to wake up and kind of check on the men, last one to leave the battlefield. Something resonates deep in our soul. And it's not, I don't think so that we could go to war as much as it is so that we could go to war for our families. Right. So can we implement that in our home? Now, something you said, and dudes, you have to hear this because I think it's a game changer for us if we can operate in this. Chaz said this idea of like rulership or kingship, it can be taken or you can see that it's been given to you. The reality is you already have it, right? You already have it, but are you showing up every day like taking it, right? Like the ruler who nobody wants to be around, or are you like, this is already who I am? So you're able to show up and either make a ruling decision or be tender in the moment. Yeah. And do this weekend, I went and John Eldridge was here and did like a Wild at Heart thing at this local spot here in Hawaii. And he said something that's like the exact same thing you just said. He said, the decisions that we make as men are either for identity or from identity.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like, it gives me chills thinking about that because, and then it, like you mentioned a moment ago, it all comes down to the heart because you could do an action, say something, touch, use your hands. And if the action is for identity, you are taking. If it's from identity, you're giving. And the people around they can feel if you're being a manipulative prick or if you are being a loving ruler.
Yeah. It's so interesting to have that, not to take the gaze away from fatherhood, but I think this same dynamic applies for us to have in our relationships with other men. And I'm going to give you an example. Obviously, I think this applies to being a father, especially if our children can watch it happen. But this dynamic of to be strong, to facilitate a space, to shake someone's hand, be a good ruler in this friendship type of manner, I guess. But then to also be tender and hug or pray for someone, or it's still the same dynamic. The strong and the tender. And specifically, I bring that up because I had someone recently say that about me, and I've known this dynamic, but it came quickly to mind when you asked that question because of this conversation I had with this friend, and he was like, I've seen you, be this incredible leader, this, stand in front of everybody, no fear, just, charge the hill. But then I've also seen you when no one knew you were looking other than me, or when no one was looking other than me, see you tenderly taking care of another man, with no outwardly effects to you at all. And that could have just been being with them for a minute, or giving a hug, or just acknowledging. And so I think that I bring that up because as men, we can, sure, we got our marriage to think about, we got our kids to think about. I don't think that friendships with other men are as important as those two things, but I think that our kids, specifically since we're talking about fatherhood, are watching how we're interacting with other, people, and especially for our sons, for Tatum to know how to interact with another man, another king, even. To be able to get tender with another strong man that he sees crushing in business and taking the hill, if you will, for that also to be a tender moment for him to go, oh, okay, like that's what it means to be a successful business owner, is to have this dynamic of strength and tenderness.
Yeah, and it's one thing to get up on stage or lead your company. I mean, there's some other values there. There's some other benefits, right? So I think sometimes to build up the courage to do that, men then discredit I'm going to go do something that nobody sees. I'm going to be tender. I'm going to hug. I'm going to ask, hey, can I pray for you? Like, so vulnerable, to just be like, hey, would it be cool if I prayed right now? And I think that the strength of a man is going to be built more foundationally in those moments.
Yeah.
Chaz, going back to, I typically ask, how's your relationship with your dad? What's something you like, you didn't like? You were raised by a single mom. You did say you met your dad at 24. He definitely brought you in under his wing, and you've created a relationship. You also said you thought somebody else was your dad, which is like a pretty big, hook in the story. Yeah. So anything come to mind to share that we missed there? That would be, points to help fathers know who they are and how important they are.
Yeah, I think that the important thing there, because the guy that I thought was my dad was never around. I never called him dad. He was in and out of prison, So, I was never really like anybody in my family. It was my mom, my grandma, my sister, aunt, 3 daughters, her 3 daughters, my cousins. It's like the only dude. And so inside of that, my wife for many years was like, who are you? Where'd you come from? Like, I get it. Like, my mom's super strong. I had so much admiration for her and what she was able to accomplish, given the circumstances that she was in. But it's like, where did you learn how to be you? Because there was no model. And I think I do have to give some credit, obviously to my mom and just her structure and being just super strong-willed to just, push forward. But a lot of that just comes from, like when I met my dad eventually, like we kind of look alike, our voices sound alike, we both have multiple businesses. I'm so much like him. We're not the same. Like, there's a lot of differences, but I'm so much more like him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the nature, or that's the design that God has, is like, we're like our parents, right? And I'm not like bringing some revelational thing, but as the dad who's listening right now, there's half of you in your child, Mm-hmm. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, I don't know. But what I'm saying is, like, there's like a seed in there. And it's a lot stronger than you think. It's a lot stronger than you think. My dad's a medical professional. He said, before meeting you, I would have easily guessed 75% environment, 25% DNA. He's like, it has to at least be the opposite. How in the world did all this happen? For all these things to fall into place.
Right. What did it do for you?
I guess the listener through that would just be to recognize that, that's a little you, man.
So, yes, I mean, super important. What did it do for your soul, your identity, when there's this seeing this man? It's like, okay, this is where I came from. What did it do for you?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's probably the other half of that story. It's for your child. So, like, as the dad, as you recognize, that this little guy or this little girl has half of me. What I mean is that their identity is made up of part of you. Mm-hmm. And so, what was I in some like identity crisis before meeting my dad? Well, no, I didn't think so. But after meeting him, it was like, oh, got it. This makes sense. Now, my last name comes from him now. I mean, I was already married. So my wife changed her last name for me when we got married. Then we changed our name when I met my dad. And so, like, it was a whole identity shift. Like, on
That's
paper,
interesting. Yeah. Why take his last name?
Well, so my first name and my middle name were given to me by the guy that was never my dad. So the wrong guy. My last name was my mom's last name, which was given to her by her stepfather, who just legally adopted them to make them a family. So not one of my 3 names was any relevance or blood or any significance. In fact, it was a false identity is what it was.
Wow.
And so for me, it was just a little exaggerated in the story of God going, I've always seen you as Chaz Daniel Wolfe, not Charles Evans Guidry. And my mom's always called me Chaz. And so that was an easy fix. And then my middle name is my dad's first name and my last name is his last name. So it's like, boom, easy. Write it on paper, write it in stone. And I can give you a lot of examples biblically on how.
Yeah. I mean, dude, for real. Yeah. It's like, hey, everything's changing now. You're getting a new name and it means something, which I think is incredible because I don't think we put that same emphasis on names today. Or even like, can we name our, great grandparents? No.
Right.
And that's sad, right? I'd like to see a shift in that.
Yeah.
Wolf is also pretty badass. My middle name's Wolfgang, so we've got some connection there.
I love that.
Wow, that's super cool. Now, this thought came to my mind. Obviously, you're great around the ladies, right? Because you grew up with a bunch of ladies.
Yeah.
Your first couple kiddos were girls.
For sure.
How was it? You were 32. You'd known your dad for almost 8 years. So there's been like El Constant connection, name change, all this stuff. Was there any wrestling or any insecurity when you found out you were going to be a father to a son? Like, how was it like you're going to be a dad? You already were a dad, but now you're going to have a son. And he's always going to know that Chaz Wolfe is his dad. You know what I mean? He's stepping into a different world than you stepped into. Any thoughts around that?
Being a girl dad is incredible. It's incredible. It for me, it's what gave me the other half that we were just talking about, the ruling well and the tenderness. Being a girl dad really accelerated that for me. But knowing that like the physical legacy goes through this little dude. Powerful. And I don't know why. That's just how God made us. And it's not even really that I'll be remembered because I really don't care about that. And of course my daughters will have children and that seems like I'm discounting them, but I knew that it would be different. I didn't know how, but when I think of just the building blocks of raising a little man, the fact that, he's 5 now and he's been shooting his bow for close to 2 years. I mean, he probably would have gone to war already if I would have, just like he's ready all the time, amped and armed in some form or fashion with a weapon. And it's like, oh, this is so good. This is so good. And I just honestly, I just find it just an immense joy to have the blessing of it. I don't know if it's definitely not any better. It's just different than the girl aspect. And then I think the interesting piece for me specifically is just because, even though my dad's a great man, like I knew him as a friend first. I call him dad now, but I didn't have those tender moments, as a boy. And so it's really just taking advantage of those, I think now more than anything. I just read a stat just the other day, or maybe it was on a video about that young men need 6 times more hugs than little girls.
Whoa.
Yeah. Which is, like, wait, what? And like Tatum he's not like always super anxious to give me a hug. And I'm like, oh buddy, I'm going to pin you down now. But every once in a while he's like, Dad, hug and a kiss. I'm like, oh, it just hits me different.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about those moments, where if you say you were standing, even right now, say you and I were standing out wherever, we're on a hunt and both our dads were there. If our dad just simply placed his hand on your shoulder, didn't say anything. Yeah. Like you can feel it, right now, like, it means something, right? It does something. Did you feel any insecurities about not growing up with a father to show you the way in being able to father your son?
No. And maybe that's a little abnormal.
No, I think it's beautiful. I want to know why.
Yeah, I don't. The only reason I can think of is the Lord. Even as a young kid, people will be like, learned about the situation or this or that, and it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like my response was, shake my head and go, well, it's his loss, not mine. Now I don't know if that was like a defense mechanism I wasn't taught that. I didn't learn that from like watching it around. It may have just been subconscious, but that's how I feel about this, is like, I've never needed someone's permission to go win.
What gave you what did give you the firm belief in your identity as a child of God, right? It sounds like you were raised knowing that.
Yeah. Kind of. I started going to church when I was 12. And so,
okay.
That for a long time was like a real logical decision. You know, my mom, there was a lot of rules and a lot of structure, and so, okay, if I'm going to follow rules and be a good person for her, I'll just follow the rules and be a good person for Jesus. Like that was my conversion at 12. And so it wasn't really, head to the heart until I was probably in my early 20s, and probably, early, either still dating or maybe married to my wife, when it was like, oh, this is the Father's heart. And then a couple of years later, I meet my dad, and then the connection, the heart connection to it all. And this idea that he's a bridegroom, and that we're his bride, and like that dynamic is like, oh, like I understand it because I'm married, but to know that I have this creator who's after me, like I'm after my wife constantly, every day, multiple times a day, I'm trying to get after her. Like that's how he thinks about me. It's like, well, that's an interesting conundrum, So that's the only thing I can think of that led me to that, man.
So good. As you've been a father, what has been a good resource to you as you've either, learned for yourself, or as you have, worked with your kids? What's been a good resource for you?
Yeah, good question. Book wise, you mentioned John Eldredge, like all his books.
Yeah.
Those are good ones. In fact, I would even suggest, Wild at Heart to the moms. When my wife read Wild at Heart, of course it was good for me because she understood me a little bit better, but she understood our son 100x. Like, she understood why he was wanting to climb to the absolute tallest thing and then jump off of it. And it wasn't, oh no, be careful. It was, all right, buddy, how dangerous are you going to be today? And you can just see him just, swell up and light up. And so, yeah, John Eldredge's stuff, other resources, really just other men, to be honest with you. That's probably the first thing that comes to my mind, is just other dudes that I'm just either inquiring. I'm super curious. I'm always asking good questions, and I'm super observant, watching what other people do. There's podcasts like this. Obviously I would recommend this podcast based on what I know now. But yeah, I think information, right? We talked about knowledge. Information, you can get it anywhere. But wisdom comes from applied knowledge.
It's good. You also mentioned a book you use with your kids.
I'm trying to remember.
The Jesus Storybook Bible.
Oh,
I want to
yes.
ask why.
Thank you.
Why that was, how that's been beneficial, how you've used it. Because, like, bro, I'll read that. I haven't in a while, but like I read that for myself sometimes, right?
Yeah.
To like understand this big story.
Yeah.
So how have you used that with your kids?
Yeah. Well, that's how much I was totally in the grain with it. We reread it every night. So for the last 11 years, between 6:30 and 6:50, every single night, that is what we do. So yeah, to encourage the listener, one, I said several things there. I have a structured time where I spend time with the kids, and we do some chores. We get ready for bed. I'm that all the way down to reading the Bible, praying, and then they go to bed. And so, but that book, man, like you said, it kind of it simplifies everything. I have been brought to tears. I don't, what happened just a few minutes ago doesn't happen often. That book, though, I'll tell you what, has wrecked me multiple times. And I'm sitting there, and the kids are like, "Daddy, you okay?" I'm like, "Yep. Just getting a download straight from the heavenly throne, just holy moly, just say it like a an 8-year-old sometimes, and it all makes sense." And so, yeah, that has been good for us. The routine has been good for us.
Yeah.
Obviously, spending time with them, emotionally connecting with them through prayer and all the fun things. But yeah, I would highly recommend that. And there's other sources too, but it's the time, it's the effort, it's the intentionality. behind all
For
that.
sure. And here's the thing, like dads, if you're going, oh my gosh, I'm not a Chaz. Like, I don't, it's like we're talking about getting a children's Bible that's like takes maybe 7 minutes to read the story. Maybe. Like, bro, anybody can do that. And the thing is it's your responsibility, dads. Like, it's not if your kids go to Christian school or Sunday school or a youth group, whatever. You can't pass this off. You can't. It's your responsibility. And it's simple, right? It's simple. You don't have to be freaking seminary.
The coolest part about all that is that, especially at a young age, they're curious. And so they either don't understand something and so they ask questions, or they do understand something so they ask more questions. And it turns into, and I don't want that to scare the listener going, oh, now I got to know all the answers. I don't have all the answers either.
Nope.
But I just simply say something like, well, this is what I know, or we look it up. What an incredible opportunity just to actually, I don't know the answer to that. Let's look it up and see what the World Wide Web says,
Yeah, it's good because that's what you want is conversation and to be able to talk about hard things and not have all the answers. Because if you're the dad who has all the answers, at some point you're going to run out and it's not going to go well. Okay. Is there anything I haven't asked you, Chaz, that you're like, man, this is something that's kind of come to mind a couple times the past 45 minutes that I want to be able to share with dudes or dads? Is anything kind of sitting in your heart?
The only thing I would say is that you're seen, that I see you. I don't know your name. I don't know where you're at. I don't know your story. But I almost said none of that matters. It's not that it doesn't matter, but none of it really matters. What matters now is that you've just listened to this episode, that you've now, you recognize that you have to take responsibility for your house. That includes your marriage. That includes each one of your children. That includes, the vision casting and the pulling out of gifts that we've just got done talking about. And that's okay. That doesn't all have to happen tomorrow. And I'm just letting you know that you're seen, man. The provision that you provide, the guidance, the just strength that you are, the pillar that you are in your house, may not be seen from inside the house. I don't know what your situation is, but I see you. I know the effort that it takes to get up every single morning on time and to do the thing that you said that you were going to do, and how hard that is to do over and over and over again. And so I just want to say I see you.
Beautiful. Yeah, man. It's like one thing about being a dad is just knowing there's other dudes waking up every day, showing up, putting the effort in. It's like sometimes that's enough. We might not need to, like the tea every day together, which those times are nice, but not tea.
Yeah.
Okay. This podcast is Fatherhood Field Notes. You've done it. Open up your life's field notes to share so we could all grow in wisdom and knowledge from your life. The mantra behind it is rebel and create. This idea that we are warriors. We do want to go fight, but not just to be destructive, to create something beautiful in its place. So for you, what's something that you're rebelling against? And then what do you hope to create in its place?
I love how you can't have one without the other. Can't leave a hole. I'm rebelling against average. I'm rebelling against mediocre. Because one, my belief is that the Lord is excellent. He's the definition of excellence.
Yeah, that's good.
And so if I'm going to be a representation of Jesus, oh man, I need to be excellent. Doesn't mean I have to be perfect, but man, I'm going to strive for excellence, and that goes down to every little thing. That's timing. That's doing what I say I'm going to do. That's the way I dress and the way I speak, and all the things. And then I lost the other part of your question. What was that?
Yeah, no, just you're rebelling so that you can create. Yeah.
I'm creating. What am I creating? I'm creating. I'm co-creating with God the rest of me and 3 more generations. And I think that He's given me the vision that I described, and He'll continue to give me pieces and downloads, and it's my job to go do the work. And then, of course, my kids are part of that, and my grandkids will be part of that, and my great grandkids will be part of that. And that's just the honor that we get to be able to co-create. And you can call it co-creating this life, making the vision come to fruition, and whatever you want to call it. But the next 100 years are my responsibility.
I love that. The next 100 years are my responsibility. I love the co-creating with God as well. How would you add in or how does your wife part of that co-creating?
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, but
Yeah. Give me the
first
30-second version.
Yeah. I mean, the 30-second version is, I can be the strength in the shell, but we already know she's the glue and the heart of everything. And I'm just a big fan. I think there's multiple scriptures that say this too, but just even go outside the Bible. I'm a big reference. I reference often Think and Grow Rich, and Think and Grow Rich talks about how the stimulation or the I don't know if it's motivation, but the stimulant of a good wife, and I'll go charge the hill for that woman.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. You tell me what you want, and I'll go get it. And there is no one else on this earth who has that power. My relationship with the Lord is obviously different, but there isn't another human here that has such deep, convicting power over my everyday actions. And so, in my pursuit of greatness, she's the leverage point. I mean, my relationship with her supporting me, her knowing how to pull out the greatest in me is why I am where I am. Now, obviously, there's all kinds of elements there that the Lord and other people, and I mean, it's just not the only reason. But dude, it's the biggest factor by far.
Oh man, yes. Let's do another podcast and talk about that relationship, because so much gold there, and I think as fathers, it's a critical component. I mean, obviously, right? If we're talking about our purpose is to help pass on this idea of family, right? I know we live in a broken world. I know everybody's got their story, but if we can fight for the marriage, if we can fight for that, then our sons and our daughters are going to do the same.
Oh, yeah.
And this really leads me to my last question to you. It's a legacy question. What is it? So Chaz, imagine 30 years from now, you're standing in a cul-de-sac, you're peering into your kids' homes. What is it that you want to see? And before you answer, guys, I think to the best of our ability to fight for that marriage plays a big role in what it is you see in the house.
For sure.
Right? Because it's this foundation that where, I've done a few weddings, I was a youth pastor. I know you were a youth pastor back in the day. And so I've done a few weddings, and I always talk about, everybody talks about 1 Corinthians 13, and it's so beautiful on your wedding day. Like, love is this, this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
You only learn that crap if you are stuck in a relationship and it's hard and it's messy. Like, how else am I going to learn patience? Everything in me wants to rip this face off. You know what I'm saying? That's the only way you learn these things.
Yeah.
But we don't think about that necessarily as this is a slow, beautiful death to and death not in a negative sense per se, but you think of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, whatever, something cool.
Yeah.
So for you, when you think about legacy, what is it that you want to see being played out in those homes?
Yeah. Well, first off, I hope they're not on a cul-de-sac. I hope that they're right here on this land. We're going to create a compound. Yeah. I immediately go tactical. If I'm peeking in the window, I hope that 30 years, there's going to be grandchildren, my grandchildren, they'll be about my kids' age, and they'll be just full of life. Hopefully like someone would look into my windows now. And, I can hear my daughters downstairs a few minutes ago playing piano. And a few minutes before that, my 2-year-old, I'm sure, was downstairs screaming. I could hear her. I don't know where she was in the house. Hopefully it didn't show up on the podcast here, but if so, then she's a superstar. But, it's stuff like that where it's they're just there. They have a safe, creative space to be grandkids. And then I hope that my son is chasing his wife, and loving her, giving her a massage, and speaking words of affirmation over her. And I hope my daughters are, nurturing their children and supporting their husbands and what their future looks like. That masculine and feminine dynamic, I think, is just so important, and that's what would be a good reflection. Obviously, the Holy Spirit is there. Just that's the joy that I kind of referenced a few minutes ago. There's a peace and a joy when he's there. that I think is a little bit probably underwhelming, honestly. And so yeah, that's like tactical. When I think maybe more theoretical or idealistic, it's like, there's strength, there's vision, there's tenacity, there's love, all these things that I feel like we're really trying hard at right now, and showing them, and they can see in us. Ideally, what I would see if I'm peeking in is me and Julie there as grandparents. We don't really have, like, I didn't really, my grandmother, single mom, her mom, she's been a part of my life, as basically another parent. But outside of that, I have grandparents that I've met since meeting my dad, but it's 24 years and they live far away and just haven't been able to build much of a relationship.
Not the
there.
same as a 10-year-old going over to their grandparents' house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we just have, and then our kids, their grandparents are all, fairly distant. And we just have a different vision for that. Like, as grandparents, I'm all in. Like, it's my responsibility. I told you the next 100 years is up to me. And part of that is building individual relationships with my grandchildren and then my great grandchildren. And so, I think Julie and I would be there in that home, facilitating some of that love, joy, peace, all that self-control, all the things.
Yeah. Chaz, I love it, my friend. It was such an honor to get to meet you, get to know you, to hear some of your story. Thank you for all the work you've done on yourself. Thank you for the way that you've chosen to see the world and take responsibility for the things God gave you and fight every day to be the man who can steward it well. But then not just for your own family, that you want to share that with the world around you. I look forward to our paths crossing again. And I just, extend blessing and peace and joy your way during, Christmas season, Advent season. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the dude that you are. And man, blessings to you.
Blessings back at you. Thanks, Dad.
All right, my friend. Until next time. What an incredible conversation. I mean, there were so many nuggets that stuck out. This idea of leading not by taking, but by realizing that you are given authority, given responsibility. I love that. The idea of being a warrior, being on the battlefield, fighting for your family. And dads, if you walk away with one thing, this idea that your son needs hugs, I think that that's really important. Like, if all of us just decided that we are going to hug our sons and really show them that they are loved, like if we could get hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of men to do this, I think just simply by doing that, our world would look different 100 years from now. Guys, this isn't rocket science. It's who you are. So don't let this lie in your head of you don't know what to do. You don't know how to be a good dad, a good father, to creep in because you know what to do. Think about what it is that you want. What is it that you want? And then go and give that to your son and to your children. All right, my friends, please write a review, help spread the word that fatherhood matters, share it with a friend. Much appreciated. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Who you are matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That's who your kids, your spouse, and your community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact, and let's create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. Much love to you. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.